Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're heading way, way back, like millions of years back. Forget recorded history for a moment. We're diving into the time when the very first crucial steps towards becoming human were actually taken. Our focus, a really foundational period, roughly 4 million down to about 2 million years ago. This is the age of the early hominids, and specifically, we're zooming in on the genus Australopithecus. We're going to unpack this time looking at huge breakthroughs, things like, bipedalism, walking upright, and maybe the first hints of tool use.
Exactly. And our mission today is really to cut through all the information out there and just pull out the most impactful bits for you. We want to explore how these species, and they weren't always our direct ancestors, mind you, how they laid down the critical groundwork for, well, for us. Look at their anatomy, their world, what their daily lives might have been like.
Yeah.
Basically connecting the dot on how those early adaptations shaped the human story.
Okay, let's set the scene then. 4 million years ago. What did the world even look like when Australopithecus first showed up? We're talking about the Pliocene epoch. I understand that means things were cooling down globally, getting drier.
That's right. A significant cooling trend, increasing aridity. And the main stage for our story is Africa, particularly Eastern and Southern Africa. You have this dramatic shift happening. Dense forests are shrinking and in their place. Open savannas, grasslands, maybe with scattered trees.
So it wasn't just wallpaper, this changing environment. It was actively shaping things.
Oh, absolutely. Far from just a backdrop. This environmental shift was a huge driving force. You could almost call it a massive evolutionary pressure cooker. As the forest shrank, these early hominids, well, they had to spend more time on the ground. They were pushed out of the trees, in a sense. And that creates immense pressure for new ways of moving, new ways of surviving out in the open.
Right. Survival of the fittest, or maybe survival of the most adaptable.
Precisely. And this is where bipedalism comes in. Walking upright, it turned out to be much more energy efficient for crossing those long distances on the savanna, searching for food, for water. Plus, it freed up the hands. Think about it, carrying food, carrying infants, maybe even starting to pick up objects, rocks, sticks.
The first steps towards tools, perhaps?
Potentially, yes. And don't forget, just being able to see further. Standing tall helps you spot predators or maybe find resources over the tall grass. These were really the first critical adaptations that started defining Australopithecus.
Okay, so this is where it gets really fascinating. Let's meet them. Australopithecus, it's not just one creature, right? It's a whole group.
Exactly, it's a genus. Think of it like a family grouping. They were around from about 4 million down to 2 million years ago. And they're so important because they kind of bridge the gap. They have this mix of features. Some very ape-like things like small brains, long arms.
Still climbing trees, maybe?
Definitely still capable climbers. But also, crucially, they had that human-like trait. Bipedalism. They were walking upright. They were survivors, adapting.
So who's the earliest one we know of in this group? Where does the story begin?
The earliest clear member is Australopithecus anamensis. We're talking about 4.2 to 3.9 million years ago. Fossils from Kenya, from Ethiopia, and their leg bones, particularly the shin bone, the tibia, show the first really clear anatomical evidence for bipedalism.
But they could still climb?
Oh, yes. They likely lived in environments that were a mix, some woodland, some open grassland. So climbing was still important. And their teeth suggest a pretty flexible diet. They could eat tougher foods when needed, which is vital for surviving on the savanna.
Okay, so anamensis starts the trend. Then we get to probably the most famous fossil hominid ever discovered.
You mean Lucy?
Exactly.
Yes, Lucy belongs to the species Australopithecus afarensis. They lived between about 3.9 and 2.9 million years ago. Lucy herself, found in Ethiopia back in 1974, is about 3.2 million years old, and she was, well, a game changer.
Why was she so significant?
Because her skeleton was remarkably complete. And her pelvis, her leg bones, they look surprisingly like ours. It's undeniable proof of fully developed bipedalism by that time.
Wow. But still some ape-like features.
Definitely. Those long arms, slightly curved finger bones suggesting she and her species were still spending time in the trees, maybe sleeping nests, foraging for fruit. And critically, her brain size was small, around 400 and 500 cubic centimeters, similar to a chimp's. It tells us that walking upright came long before big brains in our lineage.
Got it. Bipedalism first, big brains later. What about their life? Diet. Groups.
Diet seems flexible. Plants, fruits, seeds, probably insects, maybe some small animals they could catch or scavenge. As for groups, we infer they likely lived in small social groups, similar to modern primates, but direct evidence is hard to come by.
Okay, so after Afarensis, moving closer in time, who's next?
Next up, we have Australopithecus africanus, found mainly in South Africa, living between about 3 and 2 million years ago. They're sometimes described as having a more gracile or slender build compared to Afarensis.
And wasn't there another famous fossil find associated with Africanus?
Yes, the tongue child, a fossil skull discovered way back in 1924. It was really pivotal in recognizing these early hominids in Africa. Africanus seems to have had a largely plant-based diet, but again, adaptable. And importantly, there are hints of, let's say, more refined bipedalism, and maybe even better hand dexterity.
Better hand use. Getting closer to tool use, then.
Potentially paving the way, yes.
Yeah.
The capability seems to be developing.
And we should probably briefly mention there were others too, right? Like Sediba.
Absolutely. Australopithecus sediba, also from South Africa, but much later, around 2 million years ago, is particularly interesting. It shows this very intriguing mosaic of traits, some very Australopithecus-like, others surprisingly Homo-like.
The possible bridge?
Some researchers think so, yeah. It's a strong candidate for a transitional species leading towards our own genus, Homo. And there's Australopithecus garhi, too, from Ethiopia around 2.5 million years ago, which has also been linked to early tool use.
Okay, let's circle back to that bipedal leap then. It's clearly fundamental. Why? Why walk on two legs? It seems less stable, maybe.
It seems counterintuitive at first, perhaps. But the anatomical evidence in the fossils is clear: the shape of the pelvis, the angle of the thigh bone, the structure of the foot, even the base of the skull where the spine connects. It all points to upright walking. As for the why, there isn't just one single answer. It's likely a combination of factors.
Okay.
One big one is energy efficiency. Over long distances on the flat savanna, walking on two legs actually burns fewer calories than walking on four, like a chimpanzee does with knuckle walker.
Right. Covering more ground to find scattered food. Makes sense.
Then there's freeing the hands. Huge. Carrying food back to share, carrying infants, and as we mentioned, maybe carrying or even using simple tools.
Seeing over the grass, spotting danger.
That's another key factor of vigilance. And some scientists also propose thermoregulation. Standing upright exposes less of your body surface area to the harsh midday sun. Helps keep you cooler.
So it's like a package deal of advantages driven by that changing environment.
Exactly. It wasn't just one thing, but a suite of benefits that made bipedalism such a successful adaptation for Australopithecus. It really changed their relationship with the environment and, set the stage for everything that came later.
And speaking of what came later, tools. You mentioned Garhi and hints with Africanus. When do we see the first solid evidence?
This is another really exciting area. The earliest stone tools we currently know of date back to about 3.3 million years ago. They were found at a site called Lomekwi 3 in Kenya.
3.3 million years ago. So that potentially overlaps with Australopithecus afarensis.
It does overlap, yes.
All right.
Which leads to a big debate. Who made these Lomekwi tools? Was it an Australopithecus species, maybe Afarensis or another one like Kenyanthropus, or was it a very early, as yet undiscovered member of our own genus, Homo?
So we don't know for sure who made them.
We don't know for sure. The tools themselves are quite simple. Large, chunky flakes knocked off a coarse stone, probably used for basic tasks like bashing open nuts or maybe cutting meat off bones.
But the capability was there in Australopithecus. Their hands could do it.
Anatomically, yes. Species like Afarensis and later Garhi had hands that were capable of the kind of grip needed for basic tool manipulation.
Huh.
Whether they were the ones making the Lomekwi tools is the question. But even this very early, likely opportunistic tool use, whoever did it, was significant. It opens up new food sources, accessing marrow inside bones, processing tough plants. It boosts survival. It's the very dawn of technology.
Okay, so putting it all together bipedal, maybe using simple tools, living in these changing African landscapes. What was daily life like? Can we picture it?
We have to piece it together, obviously. But the best guess is a life quite similar to modern primates like chimps or baboons in some ways, living in small social groups.
Roaming the savannah?
Roaming the savannas and woodlands, yeah. Constantly searching for food, those fruits, leaves, seeds, maybe insects, maybe scavenging carcasses left by big predators. Life would have been tough, dangerous.
Any clues about their social structure within those groups?
Direct evidence is very thin. But we do see sexual dimorphism in some species, like Afarensis. The males were significantly larger than the females.
Okay, and what does that suggest?
In primates, Significant size difference between sexes often correlates with social systems involving male competition, perhaps for mates, maybe some form of social hierarchy, but it's an inference, not hard proof.
And diet, you said, was flexible. That must have been key.
Absolutely crucial. Dental studies looking at tooth shape, where patterns, chemical isotopes show they can eat a wide range of things. That adaptability let them cope with seasonal changes and different food availability. They weren't picky eaters, which helped them survive.
So this whole era, this Australopithecus chapter, it lasts for about 2 million years. But then things start to change again around 2 million years ago.
That's right. As we approach 2 million years ago, the various Australopithecus species start to, well, disappear from the fossil record. They fade out.
What's happening at the same time?
Right around then, maybe a bit earlier, we see the emergence of the first members of our own genus, Homo. Species like Homo habilis, often called handyman.
Ah, the tool maker.
Well, associated with more consistent and slightly more complex tool use, yes. And critically, these early Homo species generally had larger brains than Australopithecus.
So bigger brains, better tools, maybe more complex societies.
That's the general picture, yes. More reliant on tools, possibly more cooperative hunting or scavenging, leading to different social dynamics.
So did Australopithecus just evolve directly into Homo? Is it a straight line? Like, did Africanus or Sediba become habilis?
That's the million-dollar question. The exact relationship is still hotly debated among scientists. It's probably not a simple, single line. Evolution is more like a branching bush. Australopithecus sediba, as we mentioned, is a fascinating candidate for a potential ancestor or close relative to the Homo lineage because of its mix of traits. But whether it was the direct ancestor or just one branch on the path is unclear.
And the environment was still changing then, too.
Yes, if anything, the trend towards cooler, drier conditions and more open grasslands continued. This likely put even more pressure on hominids, favoring adaptations like bigger brains for problem solving, better tool technology, and maybe increased social cooperation, all things we see developing in early Homo.
So looking back at this whole Australopithecus story, what's the big takeaway? Why are they so important for understanding us?
Their significance is just immense. Culturally, finding fossils like Lucy completely changed how we saw our origins. Scientifically, they represent that critical transition phase. They show us the roots of bipedalism, how walking upright evolved while brains were still relatively small. They give us the context for the very beginnings of tool use. They are, quite literally, the foundation upon which the rest of human evolution was built. Studying them helps us understand those first crucial steps away from our ape ancestors and onto the unique path that led to Homo sapiens.
It's truly incredible thinking about these beings walking around Africa millions of years ago, adapting, surviving, unknowingly laying the groundwork for everything that followed.
Absolutely. Every adaptation, every challenge they overcame, it built towards the future.
So here's something to think about, connecting it all.
Go on.
Well, you've really emphasized how profound the impact of environmental change was on Australopithecus. It drove massive shifts like bipedalism, maybe pushed towards tool use.
Definitely a key driver, yes.
So considering the rapid environmental changes happening now on a global scale, what kind of evolutionary pressures might our current changing world be placing on humans today? How might that shape us way down the line in the distant future?
That is a fascinating and slightly unnerving question to ponder, isn't it?
Yeah.
What adaptations might be favored now?
A powerful thought to leave everyone with. That's all the time we have for this deep dive into the world of Australopithecus. We really hope you feel a bit more connected to these ancient relatives and definitely more curious about our shared human story.